Good evening and welcome to the channel. Tonight we are covering the moment this war crossed into a dimension that every energy analyst, every naval strategist, and every government with an economy dependent on oil has been dreading since February 28th. Iran has attacked commercial ships directly inside the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has begun laying sea mines in the world's single most important energy choke point. The United States has responded by destroying 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels. Trump has threatened military consequences at a level never seen before if the mines are not removed immediately. The International Energy Agency has made the largest emergency oil reserve release in its entire history, agreeing to release 400 million barrels into global markets to try to stop prices from spiraling completely out of control. And through all of this, Iran fired its 37th wave of strikes, using its most advanced and most powerful Khoramshahr missiles in barrages that lasted more than 3 hours, targeting Tel Aviv, Haifa, West Jerusalem, and American military bases in Iraq and Bahrain simultaneously. This is day 12 of the war, and tonight the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which 20% of the world's entire oil supply travels every single day, has become an active battlefield. The consequences of what is happening in that 39-kilometer-wide passage are not just military, they are economic, they are humanitarian, and they are global in a way that no other development of this 12-day war has been before. Let us start with what happened in the Strait of Hormuz today, because the details are vivid, alarming, and important. The UK Maritime Trade Operations Centre, which is run by the British military and monitors shipping safety across the world's most dangerous waterways, reported that at least 3 vessels were struck by projectiles near the Strait of Hormuz on Wednesday morning. The first and most dramatic was the Thai-flagged bulk carrier Mayuri Nari. The Irgc confirmed it fired on this vessel after its crew, according to the Revolutionary Guard, ignored warnings and attempted to pass through the strait. The ship was set on fire. Thick black smoke was photographed pouring from the vessel, pictures that have now circled the world. Thailand's Navy confirmed the attack. Oman's Navy responded and rescued 20 crew members, but 3 crew members remain missing and unaccounted for as of tonight, with search operations ongoing. The second vessel struck was the Liberian-flagged container ship Express Rome, also hit by the Irgc in the same operation. A third vessel, a Japanese-flagged container ship called One Majesty, was hit by an unknown projectile approximately 25 nautical miles northwest of the UAE port of Ras Al Khaimah. A fourth incident was reported 50 nautical miles northwest of Dubai. The UKMTO said it has now received 17 separate incident reports affecting vessels operating in and around the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman since February 28th. The message from Iran is explicit, and it has been delivered in fire and smoke. This waterway is closed, and any vessel that tries to use it does so at mortal risk. But the ship attacks were not even the most alarming development in the Strait of Hormuz today. That distinction belongs to the sea mines. CNN reported, citing sources familiar with U.S. intelligence, that Iran has begun laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. This is a tactic Iran used during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, and it is one of the most feared escalation steps in any naval conflict because mines do not distinguish between military vessels and civilian tankers. They do not require a human decision to trigger. They sit in the water and wait. And removing them safely, even after a conflict ends, requires painstaking, dangerous, and time-consuming mine-sweeping operations that can take months. The United States responded immediately. U.S. Central Command announced that American forces destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels near the Strait of Hormuz. Trump posted on Truth Social warning Iran directly. If any mines have been placed in the Strait of Hormuz, the United States wants them removed immediately. He then wrote that if, for any reason, mines were placed and are not removed forthwith, the military consequences to Iran will be at a level never seen before. Never seen before. Those words from the American president carry a specific and terrifying weight. Trump has now used variations of that phrase multiple times in this war. Each time he has escalated, and each time Iran has not backed down. The Soufan Center think tank issued a briefing note today saying that the security risks alone in the Strait of Hormuz could make a single transit through the strait more costly than the profit margin on the entire oil shipment. That is not a theoretical concern. That is the real-world calculation being made right now by every shipping company, every oil tanker operator, and every insurance underwriter on the planet. Insurance rates for vessels attempting to transit the Strait of Hormuz have risen to levels approaching those charged for ships carrying grain from Ukraine during the ongoing Russia war. Some ships are now broadcasting desperate messages in place of their normal destination information. Messages reading things like China owner all Chinese crew in a naked attempt to signal to Irgc forces that they should not be targeted. The Strait of Hormuz is not just effectively closed, it is a war zone. And the global economy is bleeding out through that 39-kilometer gap right now in real time. The International Energy Agency's response to the Hormuz crisis today was historic in scale, but may prove inadequate given the severity of what is unfolding. The IEA announced that its member countries have unanimously agreed to release 400 million barrels of crude oil from their strategic reserves. Germany's energy minister confirmed compliance. Japan announced it would begin releasing reserves immediately without even waiting for formal IEA coordination. This is the largest emergency strategic reserve release in the IEA's entire history. For context, the previous largest release was in 2022 following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and that was significantly smaller. The scale of this release tells you everything you need to know about how seriously governments around the world are now treating the Hormuz crisis. But analysts are already warning that the reserve release may not be enough to stabilize prices long-term if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Capital Economics noted that whether oil prices stay down depends entirely on how the conflict evolves, and nothing in today's development suggests the conflict is moving toward de-escalation. The Strait of Hormuz also carries a third of the world's fertilizer supply, a fact that is not getting enough attention. If that route stays closed, the downstream effects on global food production and food prices will be felt within months. G7 leaders held an emergency video conference today, hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron, to discuss the global economic fallout of the war. Macron told reporters after the call that he has no confirmation from either partner intelligence services or French intelligence that Iran is actually laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. He said Iran's military capabilities have been weakened by American and Israeli strikes, but have not been reduced to zero. That second statement from Macron, delivered after a G7 emergency call, is significant. The leader of one of America's closest European allies is publicly saying that Iran still has meaningful military capability remaining, despite 11 days of the most intense American bombing campaign since the Gulf War. That directly contradicts the American official narrative that Iran is badly losing and nearly defeated. The world's governments are watching the same war that Washington and Tehran are fighting, and they are reaching very different conclusions about what it means and where it is going. Now let us talk about what Iran did on the missile front today, because the Hormuz attacks did not happen in isolation. They happened simultaneously with Iran's most intense and most powerful missile operation of the entire war. The IRGC launched its 37th wave of strikes using what it described as super heavy Khoramshahr missiles in multi-layered barrages that lasted more than 3 hours. The Khoramshahr is one of Iran's most advanced ballistic missiles, a medium-range weapon capable of carrying multiple warheads and penetrating sophisticated air defense systems. The IRGC targeted Tel Aviv, Haifa, and West Jerusalem in Israel simultaneously, along with U.S. military bases in Erbil in Iraq and Manama in Bahrain. Israeli air defenses intercepted the missiles fired at Israel, with sirens sounding across Tel Aviv and central parts of the country. Israeli defense forces confirmed the launch detections and reported interceptions. But the scale and simultaneity of the attack, 3 Israeli cities and 2 Gulf military bases targeted in a single coordinated operation, demonstrates a level of operational coordination that the United States has been saying for a week should no longer be possible. Iran's military command structure, despite the killing of senior commanders, the destruction of communications infrastructure, and 11 days of continuous bombardment, launched a 3-hour coordinated multi-city, multi-country ballistic missile attack today. That is what Day 12 looks like. And Russia is making that possible in a way that is becoming clearer and more alarming with each passing day. A Western intelligence official confirmed to CNN today that Russia is now providing Iran with specific tactical advice on drone operations, going beyond the general intelligence sharing about U.S. troop locations that was reported earlier this week. Russia is now helping Iran calibrate and target its drone attacks against U.S. and Gulf nation targets in real time. This is not Russia watching from the sidelines. This is Russia actively participating in the operational planning of attacks that are killing American assets and threatening American soldiers. And the Trump administration's public response to this has been to deflect questions about it and avoid directly confronting Moscow. Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy, said Russia told the U.S. it has not shared intelligence with Iran during the war. The Kremlin said something, and Witkoff reported it. But Western intelligence officials are telling CNN the opposite is true. Someone is not telling the truth. And the side that is lying about whether Russia is helping Iran target America is making a calculation that has consequences far beyond this particular war. Iran also made a threat today that extends the battlefield in a genuinely new direction. Iranian forces warned they are prepared to target economic centers and banks related to U.S. and Israeli entities in the region. This is a threat against financial infrastructure, banks, economic centers, the financial architecture of the Gulf states that underpins not just regional commerce but global trade flows. If Iran moves from targeting military bases and oil infrastructure to targeting banking and financial systems, the economic damage would multiply in ways that bombs cannot fully capture. Financial systems are interconnected in ways that physical infrastructure is not. Disrupting a bank in Dubai does not just harm Dubai. It disrupts every business and every transaction that flows through Dubai, which means it disrupts a significant portion of global trade. There are several other developments today that deserve attention and that, taken together, paint a picture of a war that is widening rather than narrowing on every possible front. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has not appeared in public and has not issued a single written statement since being appointed. CNN confirmed today that he suffered a fractured foot and other minor injuries in the first wave of U.S.-Israeli strikes on February 28th. He is injured, he is in hiding, and he has been silent since the day he was crowned supreme leader. The man the IRGC pledged to fully obey and die for has not yet told them a single thing publicly since taking power. The IRGC is fighting this war without a functioning supreme leader who has been able to publicly lead it, and yet the war machine keeps operating. That tells you everything about how deeply institutionalized the IRGC's autonomous war-fighting doctrine has become. The World Health Organization today issued an urgent warning about what it is calling black rain falling over Tehran and other parts of Iran. After Israeli strikes on fuel depots in Tehran last week sent massive plumes of thick black smoke into the atmosphere, that smoke has mixed with rain clouds and is now falling back to Earth as toxic, contaminated precipitation. WHO warned that the black rain contains carcinogens and other toxic pollutants and poses serious health risks to the civilian population. The people of Tehran, who have been living under continuous missile strikes and an internet blackout that has now exceeded 240 hours, are now also being rained on by toxic pollution from their own destroyed infrastructure. This is what total war looks like for the civilian population. In Washington, political pressure on the Trump administration is intensifying in ways that could begin to constrain the war's conduct. Senate Democrats are demanding public hearings after classified briefings failed to clarify the conflict's goals, timeline, or strategy. Senator Murphy criticized the lack of planning for reopening the Strait of Hormuz and warned the situation could become an endless war. The Pentagon confirmed approximately 140 U.S. service members have been wounded and 8 have been killed since Operation Epic Fury began. The preliminary assessment of the Manab school strike, where approximately 168 children and teachers were killed on the first day of the war, now suggests the United States was likely responsible, with dated intelligence possibly causing the school to be mistakenly targeted alongside a nearby military compound. 6 Democratic senators released a joint statement saying they are horrified and demanding accountability. Spain withdrew its ambassador to Israel today with no detailed explanation, the first formal European diplomatic break with Israel since the war began. Lebanon's death toll has now reached 570 people. More than 750,000 people have been displaced. Israeli forces are pushing deeper into southern Lebanon. Israel struck a Red Cross ambulance, killing a paramedic. Human Rights Watch has confirmed white phosphorus use in civilian areas. France has called an emergency UN Security Council meeting on Lebanon. The Lebanese president is calling for the international community to help disarm Hezbollah through diplomacy rather than Israeli military action. And through all of this, 43,000 American citizens have now been evacuated from the Middle East on commercial and State Department chartered flights. The region is emptying of foreigners. The people who cannot leave, the Iranian civilians, the Lebanese families, the workers in Gulf cities, they are the ones living inside what this war has become. 12 days, more than 100 to 300 civilians confirmed dead in Iran, 570 killed in Lebanon, 8 Americans killed in combat, 140 wounded, 17 shipping incidents in the Strait of Hormuz, 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels destroyed, 3 commercial ships on fire today, the largest emergency oil reserve release in history, a G7 emergency economic meeting, a new Iranian supreme leader who is injured and has not spoken publicly, a Russian president providing tactical drone advice to the side that is shooting at Americans, a Strait of Hormuz that is now a minefield and an active war zone, and a world that is 12 days into a conflict with no ceasefire, no negotiations, no diplomatic track, and no clear answer to the question of how it ends. Before I hand it over to you, here are your 3 questions for tonight. Question A. Iran has now attacked commercial ships and laid sea mines in the Strait of Hormuz, directly threatening 20% of the world's oil supply. The IEA released a record 400 million barrels from reserves, but analysts say it may not be enough. Do you think the global economy can sustain a prolonged Hormuz closure? Or are we weeks away from an economic crisis that forces one side to blink? Question B. Russia is now confirmed to be providing Iran with specific drone tactical advice to help hit American targets, while the Trump administration publicly denies it. Do you think the United States will eventually be forced to confront Russia directly over this involvement? Or will it remain a hidden dimension of the conflict that neither side wants to escalate publicly? And question C, Iran's new supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei is injured, in hiding, and has not spoken publicly since being appointed. The Irgc is fighting without active supreme leadership and still launching 3-hour Khoramshahr missile barrages. Does that make you more or less confident that a ceasefire or negotiation is possible in the near future? Drop your answers in the comments. Share this video because the Strait of Hormuz is not just a Middle East story. It is a story about the price of everything in your life. Subscribe if you are not already. Stay safe, stay informed, and I will see you on the next one.